Okay, I think we should get started. So I'm just going to do a very brief intro, the usual housekeeping, and also to let you know that we are going to be running a slightly different hangout this week. And I will explain to you why in just a little second. So welcome to those who are just joining now. And again, apologies for sending the wrong link. My name is Amani Hassan. I'm the program director at the Arab British Center. This week, we're delighted to be hosting Atef Bouzid, Sebastian Leitner, and Christina Hazboun from MARSM. The hangout today is going to be led by our wonderful trustee at the Arab British Center, Saeed Taji Farouky, whom you've had the pleasure of meeting actually for our first ever hangout. Saeed is a super talented, award-winning documentary filmmaker, and he is going to be leading the conversation with our three guests today. All microphones are muted for now, and there is a chat box for those, I'm sure most of you know already. There is a chat box at the bottom of the application. Please type in your questions as we go along. We'll be in conversation for about half an hour or so, and then we will be taking questions from the audience. This event is recorded as well. It will be available on our website. Please check out our Hangout section for all our previous editions. I think that's it from me. I will hand over to you now, Saeed.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yes, so we have about an hour. I think we'll keep it as quite a casual conversation. I'll be reading your questions as they come in, so I may incorporate them into the chat. Traditionally, we do sort of 40 minutes of a discussion and then questions, but I think it's probably better that they move it in as things go along. You may hear my cat somewhere in the background. She's very nervous these days, so she's going to be yowling a lot. And then before I begin, I've been doing this for every Zoom meeting I've been involved in lately, but I just want to say a couple of words. I think it's very important for us to talk about culture and arts, especially these days, because they really save us and nourish our souls. And at the same time, I think it's important to recognize that there are people suffering and struggling under this pandemic. So I just want to take a minute to remember the people who've lost their lives, and also to honor the healthcare workers and frontline workers who are risking their lives to keep us safe, and to say that they deserve our respect, and they deserve fair wages, and they deserve our protection legally and physically. And I also want to say a word of support to everybody out on the streets and at home who are fighting against racism and fighting against the horrific legacies of colonialism and white supremacy, both here in the UK, in the US, and all around the world. So within that perspective, where I do think arts and culture play a huge role, an incredibly important role, I would like to introduce our three guests. We have Atef Bouzid. He's a German journalist, director, and producer based in Berlin, who began his career in sports journalism. His work specializes in culture, music, and social issues, and his directorial debut, Cairo Jazzman, premiered at the prestigious Rotterdam Film Festival in 2017. So hopefully you
Hello from Berlin.
Sorry?
Hello from Berlin, I told you.
Hello from London. Hopefully many of you have had a chance to watch it through MARSM's site, right? Then we also have with us Sebastian Leitner. Sebastian is the film's co-producer and editor. Hi, Sebastian. He's a freelance filmmaker, producer, and editor who specializes in music and comedy. His directorial debut, Nose Land, a documentary about the classical music industry, featured John Malkovich and Roger Moore and was released in 2012. So welcome, Sebastian, to the conversation.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
And we have Christina Hazboun. If you give us a little wave there, Christina.
Hello, guys. Hi. Thank you for having me.
Christina is PR and communications for MARSM UK. They are a brilliant group dedicated to promoting music from the Middle East and North Africa in the UK, and hopefully soon around the rest of the world, right?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Indeed.
And if I may just add, MARSM was the winner of our award for culture last year in 2019. So,
Oh, yes, of course.
Yes.
so delighted to have them with us.
Thank you. And we're very delighted that we're here.
I just wanted to say something before we continue. Thanks a lot, actually, for the invitation. Just wanted to say, like Sebastian and me, we are very delighted, you know, that people are still very interested in our movie and that we got this platform. And it's very nice also to see other activists like you, because we have the same motive to show a different image against like the stigmatization of, in this case, the Arab world, for example, and other cases. But so we are very delighted because our objective was, of course, to show a different angle, perspective on the Arab world. That's why, so thank you for being with you and for the invitation.
Sure, thanks for joining us. And it's a good, I mean, maybe that's a good place to begin, actually, because I do feel like the film on the surface is about a music festival, but actually, as you raise many times in the film, it's also about changing perceptions and changing prejudices. So I'm curious how you got to jazz as a vehicle for that, Atef.
Well, very easy, because the protagonist, Amr Salah, he is a jazz pianist and composer. And we've met 2002 the first time when I was in Egypt for language scholarship to learn Arabic, actually. And so we met, we became friends, and I was following him, what he's doing. So in 2009, he started the Cairo Jazz Festival for the first time. And yeah, finally, end of 2013, it popped into my head, why am I not doing a documentary about this guy and his activism? And of course, I love jazz. And for me, it was clear jazz is a perfect transportation tool, music in general. So to tell this story, to show the story and this activism, this idealism, and to use this opportunity to show a different image, which is not known, especially in the Western world, yeah, to present this people that there is a civil society with the same idealism and activism like us here in the West, but they are not privileged, so they have to fight. And I wanted to show this, and yeah, thank God we could realize it.
And were you already a jazz fan before this, or this was your entry into it?
Well, I was already, of course, a jazz fan, but like I have a kind of a universal taste, eclectic, so it depends. But jazz, of course, is great, and for me, it was really a great assist to have the jazz music to tell the story. Of course, you know, it's the greatest tool. You know, music is the universal language, and it connects people from everywhere. And so that's why also I wanted to do this music, this movie. Definitely. And yeah, so.
And there's a great sort of, I mean, it's amazing because I've lived in Cairo. I'm sure many people here are familiar with Cairo, or at least this sort of beautiful chaos of that city. And we've seen it on screen a lot, but this is the first time I've ever seen it accompanied by jazz music. And in a way, it seems so perfect. It's such a perfect fit.
I mean, as you might have realized, the city of Cairo and its population they are the second main protagonist, beside, of course, Amr Salah. But so it's not an homage to jazz. Actually, for me, it's an homage, of course, to Amro's activism and idealism, but also in general to the city of Cairo and to its population. And yeah, in some ways, actually, or most ways, Cairo is like free jazz. You know, if you see the streets, the people, it's crowded, it's tense, it's vibrant. It's really, this was from the very first second I have been to Cairo. It's a very special, very unique city. And so that's why for me it was, I'm very grateful that I got this opportunity to do this movie about the city and its population. And especially the young generation, actually, which is the future.
Yeah, it comes up a few times in the film, right? There's I mean, on the one hand, the criticisms from the rappers that they say, you know, the old generation just has to get out of our way. And I think also, I'm just looking up his name, Mohammed Al-Sawi, I believe, who's the founder of one of the cultural centers, says something about there's no space for youth, and in fact the Ministry of Culture doesn't generally think of youth culture as being important. So is that part of the activism that you mentioned? Because I don't know necessarily, I mean, you describe Amr Salah as an activist. Is it a political activism, or is he a cultural activist in that way?
Well, in the end, he's a cultural activist, but where does it start? Like, is music political? You know, there are a lot of disputes about it, or like talks about it. In the end, it's activism, and it has an impact on the civil society. This is the most important thing. And of course, if you do a movie about the Arab world or an Arab country or the Arab civil society, I mean, you have to mention the generation gap, which is a problem all over the Arab world, of course. And it's a huge problem. And especially, I mean, it's mentioned in my movie when 70% of Arab societies are under 25, 30. So, but they are not really, you know, they can't really participate. So there's a huge gap, and in my eyes, you can't hide this. Or, I mean, if you do a story in an Arab country, like Egypt especially, it has to be mentioned. I mean, because it affects the people, it affects especially the young generation, you know.
Sorry, if I can have a bit of an interference here. I think that there's the point of space as well is brought up in the film quite dominantly and powerfully, how there's no spaces for the youth or for the musicians in Cairo where to practice or present their music, which is an ongoing debate within the Egyptian and even Arabic communities. And also the question about music, whether music is political or not, it goes even higher and further, that is art political or not? And I think it is within the greater context. You can't separate the two, because any statement you make within music is sort of seen as coming from an individual who comes from within the society and reflects and mirrors what is happening in that society. So that music reflects what is happening all around us.
So how do you, as MARSM, I mean, since you jumped in, Christina, how do you place yourselves in terms of music as either culture or politics, or is it both? Is it inseparable?
I think it is difficult to separate the two, especially that we have chosen as MARSM to give our support and voice as a platform for the alternative, independent and grassroots musicians from the region and from the area, which means that a lot of them may voice different messages to the ones that are prevalent in mass media and in commercial music. So we really pride ourselves in the fact that we have been working with musicians who have emerged from circumstances of oppression and poverty and other forms of injustice.
And Amr mentions that in the film a few times, right, Atef, in the sense that like some of the older artists are still getting state funding, but he goes to the Ministry of Culture for something that, you know, from the outside looks really impressive, a Cairo Jazz Festival, and they offer him, was it 3,000 euro, which 5,000 euro, which barely even covers, you know, taxes for the syndicates.
I mean, actually, it's an example for the general problem in the Arab world, that like there is no support for independent artist scene or musicians, and this is a general problem. And Amr is just, you know, an example for it. And also, like, for example, this interview with the state secretary and the tourism minister is just an example also for the universal problem of bureaucracy and communication with artists, you know, which can work universally, you know, and this is very sad, of course, you know, that, and I made this movie also to show actually that there is the same talent, you know, people who are worth it to be supported, but the problem is they're not privileged. Like in Germany, we have a support for the free artist scene, the same in the UK and so on. Everything is structured and so on, but there it's not. And this is the problem. And so the more yeah, the greater it is when you find people like Amr and his team who nevertheless, you know, invest all their energy to realize something for a great event for the civil society.
And when you're making the film, because I'm curious, anyone who has tried to make a film in Egypt in the last 30 years will know it's almost impossible to have a camera on the streets. So I'm really curious, can you tell us about the process of making it?
So yeah, this is a very special topic because normally it was actually a mission impossible, especially for me as a freelance independent filmmaker. It's actually impossible. So it was kind of a wonder, of course. I tried everything, and thank God it happened. I got a shooting permission for 4 weeks, but only indoor.
Okay.
So, and then in the end, it was a magic day with the help of the International Press Office in Egypt. I got for 1 day, and it was the very last day of the shooting. I got for 1 day a shooting permission in the city. I got a guard, like from the press office, state security, and then we were around, and I could shoot with my team. And this guard, he had 5 different copies from 5 different ministries who, you know, gave me their go that I'm allowed to shoot in the streets of Cairo for 1 day. Because if not, you get arrested immediately.
Yeah.
So that's very important. I mean, for filmmakers, you know, if you do it, because you shouldn't risk really, you know, to lose your equipment and to get deported or whatever. So it's very tough, but thank God it worked out. But also I was lucky because it was the beginning of 2014. The atmosphere was still a little bit more relaxed. So there, the time slot was there, still open for realizing maybe projects like this. But I'm sure actually nowadays I wouldn't be able to do it anymore like this.
Right.
But you know, Saeed, what that means? It means that all of the city shots, all of the outside shots you see in the movie, all of them were shot in this 1 day.
Oh, that's what, okay. Those were that was the only time you had.
Exactly. So I mean, imagine editing the film with 99% indoor footage, left alone the festival. I mean, the music festival, yeah, left alone all the live recordings. But you end up with 1% of outdoor scenes you have to put together and use for the vibe of the whole structure, of the whole story, of the whole film. And this is actually very well connected to the question we got in the chat here from Abir. Obviously, I mean, from my point of view, everything you do can be activism. Everything you do can also be not activism. In the end, you do something and it really gets twisted by the media, by somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I just finished my project, my latest feature, which we shot in Iran about female singers in Iran. And it's exactly the same thing. So already now, the film has not been released, but already now we have to deal with Iranian media that wants to take our project kind of, and we really have to decide who do we give access to. And so anything you do, because you never know, change the comment to a scene, change the music, the underlying story of a scene, and it has a completely different meaning. So obviously everything is always activism. It really depends on what you show. And obviously you have one goal, one message, or one story to tell, but you can use the same scene. I mean, as an editor, this is my daily life. You take scenes, you put them together differently in different order, and it's a completely different story. This is this highly manipulative scene where you just have to make a decision. And obviously, visual aesthetics is a form of activism. It always is, but 50% is in your head because you have to interpret this information. So I think this is, I mean, if you have 1 day to shoot outdoor scenes, then you basically are just an observer and just try to capture what the feeling, the atmosphere. So this is for me, I mean, I came on later after the shooting. I wasn't there present at the shooting. So when I heard the stories and when I kind of heard the production diary of Atef, for me, it was like kind of amazing, and the impossibility of doing something and pushing it to the limits. But in the end, you have something and nobody really sees this kind of stress you have. And this is kind of the magic of filmmaking. that nobody really sees all the terror you've gone through, kind of. And this is the amazing thing. So for me, I still hearing those stories. It's fantastic.
I'm just going to read out the question from Abir for those who didn't see it. One of the most powerful aspects of the film is how the camera captures the city's soundscape, even when we don't hear sounds, and this becomes an entry point to the story of jazz in the country. Visually, the film moves jazz music from the periphery to the center. So to what extent can we speak of this visual aesthetic as a form of activism? And it's a great reference to the way that the film, I mean, I guess the way you cut it and the way that you filmed it, Atef, was to reflect the philosophy of jazz in the visual storytelling. Does that?
Exactly. So, first of all, I have to say, the idea from the very first beginning was to produce something for the big screen, for cinema. And Sebastian, when I met Sebastian actually very late. He entered the project actually in June 2016. And the great thing was he understood my vision directly and we fit. So, so it was really like the plan to produce it for the big screen, because this shows and this transports like the city atmosphere. And as I told you, Cairo is the main protagonist after Amr, and the sound and the vibe and so on, especially for people who don't know it, they get it really then on the big screen, and it's always, you know, accompanying the story of Amr, but the city of Cairo is always in the, behind it, in the background, you know, and sometimes it gets also, you know, directly on the platform. So, and the great thing, of course, jazz is political, of course, you know, I mean, this is the great thing also how Amr is explaining it, you know, as a jazz activist, as a composer, and jazz music had always a social impact, and it's a great impression also for civil society activism. So, and this, for me, that's why, as I told you, it was great to have this, you know, to tell this story, and to present Amr, and at the same time Cairo with this amazing music.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, as soon as I started watching, it's impossible to ignore the fact that the history of jazz music is from counterculture, right? It was formed in Black America as a form of protest against government, and was from the beginning the only, you know, one of the only free expression forms that you could find. And so now it's being, in a way, reused and remixed and co-opted by Arab music, Arab culture.
Yeah, not just that. If I can again jump in and say that it's jazz as a musical tool and instrument has been amazing within the, as you said, giving voice to the Black African community in the States. But also if we think about the film Jazz Ambassadors, I don't know if you've seen it, about the way the US used jazz as a tool to tour with Neil Armstrong, with the Armstrong and others within the MENA region to promote themselves within the Cold War. So this is where we go back to the fact that actually music is very political, because it can be used to bring people to your side or to turn them against you.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also what the film also reminded me of is this sort of endless cycle of art being countercultural and then being co-opted and becoming mainstream. And then out of that, there needs to emerge another form of more radical version of that art, right? So we're sort of constantly reevaluating and remixing in the case of jazz in particular. And so, Sebastian, can you tell us more about the edit? Because there are these beautiful sort of transition scenes where really the visuals and the music are working together phenomenally. But then you also have the story itself, the narrative. So how did you approach that as a storytelling technique?
My niche has always been music. I mean, I'm from originally from Vienna, so I got in touch with all the big classical musicians. I used to work, and I still work for big names like Joshua Bell, Julian Rachlin. I still work for with classical musicians on different projects, and not so much as before, because I always wanted to work on cinematic projects. I always wanted to work on stories that just need to be told. because those stories usually don't get any funding, get any money. If you get somebody involved with money, they want to kind of twist it in their way and push their message. So for me, this is very important. And so I pick my projects very, very carefully. In the end, it's not only the teamwork that has to work. You have all the people, the characters have to work together and, you know, understand each other, but also kind of working for the same cause. And the cause for me, at least, has to be some kind of value. I'm happy to put in my free time. I mean, now with my little kid, not so much anymore, but before I really tried to put in my free time in projects where I say, well, I can help because I'm a professional film editor coming from music, so I can help with something, but I only want to do it for project I feel are kind of valuable. So my background is in classical music, and it became my niche to work with classical music and with classical musicians, because you also, if you're dealing with the music, you're also dealing with the characters, you know, with sometimes maybe difficult divas, sometimes very easygoing, funny dudes, you know, it's a mix like always, but in the end, you're dealing with a character, the musician and the music. And this is my specialty, kind of finding the room, finding the connection for music and imagery working together. As a big fan of the classical cinema, so mainly in 80s, 90s for me, where it always been, if you watch it without the sound, you lose a lot of context. If you watch it without the video, you have a different experience, and so on. Nowadays, it often feels like just to put something underneath, you know, put some music, it's okay. Sometimes they stick to temp music. And so for me, the music always comes first. What I learned coming from classical music is that for me, 99% of the time, I have music first and then find the right images, which is very rare because everybody else basically works the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are in the edit, you put together the imagery, and then you give it to a composer or somebody and say, well, do something with it. For me, since I'm working with musicians and I highly respect kind of the creative work of a composer or of a musician, I take the work as is and say, okay, this is fantastic. And I really look for the right place of the track. We very often just, Atef and I, we spend hours just listening to music and finding this kind of sweet spot that moved us the most. And being a very visual people, the human race, is very often you just close your eyes and you already see the images. At least for me, I know the material once I've gone through it, and I just listen to a track and then immediately something forms together. So this is how I work, and this is why I'm still around in this niche, or this is why I have so much to do in this niche. It's not so many other people working with music in that sense. So my customers for jobs are mainly musicians, and the projects I want to do are mainly connected to music. And all this story elements, I mean, obviously as an editor, you are a good storyteller. You have to be a good storyteller. But it also means that sometimes, you know, like in classical music, there is breaks in terms of speed and rhythm, and you need those to kind of reset your mindset to jump to a new topic, or to just let something become part of the story, to introduce something. And from us, it was very clear from the very first moment that we really want to have little portraits of the city with music to make it a creative thing. We also wanted to create a little piece of art. We wanted not only, because then we both don't like the typical German documentaries, which is just observing and not tinkering with anything, just observing, putting a voice over, explaining things, and not really kind of making something creative and telling a story and just letting characters breathe. And if you have a character like Amr and Cairo as a city, you just want to have it there for a second and just enjoy and just feel them kind of and get to know them at this level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's it. There's nothing else coming.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can say it was destiny, actually, that our meeting was destiny. And it was like really kind of like working love at first sight, because Sebastian understood me directly. He was immediately in. And then, yeah, it was actually very crazy, because then we finished the movie in 5-6 weeks. So just to tell you.
Wow.
Okay, that's fast.
That's how fast I am. If you want to hire me, here's my number and my contact.
Like it. That's really fast.
Yeah.
Because it's actually quite a it's one of these films that looks simple when you watch it, but you know, because I am also a filmmaker, you understand how complex the structure really is, but well, intricate without being complex. So as a viewer, it's just a story, but when you see how it's being put together,
this is the magic of film, which is very often ignored these days, or especially in documentaries, that many things just feel, for me at least, feel very half-hearted and just raw and not really, you know, so many chunks of documentaries these days are just, well, they're there, but they don't really serve a purpose. They don't really draw me in. They're just there to kind of prolong the story. So the magic of filmmaking is exactly this. Like any magic trick, you make it look easy. You make it look, very fantastic and great.
It's hell of a work to make it look easy, you know. So
a nightmare.
And you can't imagine, really, it was very tough in the editing, but because we understood each other perfectly, so we made it. And you know, for me it was, you know, music, it's the tool to make it entertaining also, you know, and to connect the storytelling or the story itself and the different characters, and that's and it worked out. No,
it's a nightmare. Editing a film is something you do because you love it, and I love editing. I do camera, I do producing, I do directing, but what I love the most is the very first thing that got me into filmmaking, and it's editing, because there everything comes together and you decide the final touch. You can kill a film and you can make it great. Very often this is the most important part of the film process, and if you don't see the edit, then it's a good edit. And if you have the feeling of you're just taken by the hand and guided through a story, that's good editing. And it doesn't always work. I mean, there are passages in the movie where I say, you know, had we had more time and more money, whatever. Yeah. But in the end, those are details that don't matter because the rest is there. And it's an absolute crazy nightmare. But if you have this vision, if the team works well together, and if you share this vision and the love for it, and the enthusiasm, of course. I mean, if you look at Amr and his father and his mother and how he deals with them and the stories. I mean, everybody has those stories. Everybody has this fascination of human characters, and even more so if they're from a different ethnicity and different background, because it's more interesting and it's a different language, and we really kind of try to, you know, focus on them. And this is very hard to do. And I didn't understand a word, obviously. I don't speak Arabic, but I learned kind of through my musical background. I understood enough of the rhythm, you know, of when is kind of this comment finish. So I kind of learned a little bit Arabic through the time, and it kind of helped me in getting a better editor as well. And now it helped me with my next project, which is in Farsi mainly. So, you know, it's not always just work, and you do it because you love it. And yes, for me, this is my selling point. I don't understand the question in the chat. I'm sure I have to say there is from Mike.
Let me try and interpret it. I mean, Mike can also jump in, but so he's saying, is TV now waking up to a new urban generation of filmmaking? So and he gives us examples, Jazz and the Eddie on Netflix. I think
not in Germany.
Not in Germany?
Exactly.
The Eddie, I think, is that Damien Chazelle's miniseries on Netflix? Does anyone know about the jazz club? Maybe. Anyway. So, I mean, which relates actually to the journey of the film, Atef. So maybe can you describe that process and the challenges you've had?
Like in realizing the project, the movie from beginning, or what? Or what do you mean?
Well, you know, it was released in 2017 and still hasn't had a wide release or support in the Arab world.
No, yeah, well, it was rejected by all Arab film festivals, actually.
Why? What do you think?
It's very interesting. So Rotterdam 2017 was my scoop, and it gave me international reputation, and it was really the biggest success because Rotterdam is a very prestigious festival. It's a great one. They were very supportive. But nevertheless, as a complete independent, without institutional, support, no distributor, no sales agency, no big production company, it's very tough because you're alone and you have to compete with an industry. And especially when you manage to realize a cinema quality documentary, actually nobody's waiting for you, because like the big TV companies, for example, they don't touch you because when they didn't invest in you and when they didn't co-produce you, they're not interested in you. And it's not about the story. So, and this is actually, the experience we made. So internationally it went well. So it started very slow, but it was then shown and invited all over Europe, like Italy, Spain. Last year I was finally in France. I had a great screening at the Institut du Monde Arabe, and they really loved it. I was even invited to Brazil, to Sao Paulo, to the biggest Arab film festival in South America.
Oh, great.
And so it was great, really, because to see, the perception, and then people love it when they have the opportunities to see it. Also in Germany, it was very tough because I got also completely ignored in Germany. But thank God this has completely changed, actually, finally now in 2019, because finally I got a distributor and I got a German-wide cinema release. I got amazing press in Germany, in nationwide newspapers, actually, in 2. So it was, so you need stamina, especially as an independent director, filmmaker. You have always to fight, you have always behind it, you have always to push it. And because nobody else does. And because if you're not part of the industry, you are ignored. And in the Arab world, the experience was that, especially as an independent, as a freelance, independent filmmaker, they don't take you serious. I mean, I've met in Rotterdam, I remember, I've met like Egyptian film industry people, and they really did their best to ignore me. I mean, I invited them to the screening and everything, but they didn't want to touch Cairo Jazzman. And also every other Egyptian film festival didn't want to touch it. So, and actually people didn't understand it, and especially also because I got actually great press coverage in the Arab world, at Al Arab, Al Ahram Online, even Al Jazeera documentary. But it was interesting to see. So, but in the end, if you see the whole, also, especially there, the whole networking and industry, I wasn't really surprised then in the end, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I would also guess for one thing, there is a treatment of politics in the film that's sort of careful, but also fairly overt, if you understand the references. I mean, even saying that the film is dedicated to civil society, you know, that term in Egypt means anti-government.
Exactly.
And it has for the last 20, 30 years.
But this usually helps. I mean, for the Western world, being kind of provocative usually helps to sell, because everybody wants to hear something bad or provocative, or, you know, something. Huh?
But not in Egypt, right?
Yeah, but I mean, to make it clear, I mean, when you have seen my movie, of course, you realize that I did it to celebrate Egypt and to celebrate the young generation, to celebrate activists. So I didn't do this movie to criticize or to show a bad image of Egypt. The opposite, okay? That was my aim. This was my the target. But of course, if you do, as I told you before, if you do a movie in the Arab world, you can't deny the problems which are existing. And of course, I'm showing the problem, the gap between the civil society and the official Egypt. And this is, of course, the problem. And then, of course, if you know the political situation in the last 4 or 5 years in Egypt, so I was not surprised that I was never invited to any film festival. But it was also all other Arab film festivals weren't interested, you know.
But also, I would like to highlight the point that there aren't many Arabic music festivals that showcase film. And this is where when we were thinking about our online platform with MARSM, we thought about giving a platform to music documentaries from the Arab world or about the Arab world, because there actually is a lack of them coming from our area tackling music. Whereas like back in the 40s and 50s, musicals, especially coming from Egypt, were almost like a huge hit. They no longer exist. And so this is something I really appreciated about the film, that it tackles music.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to show also, of course, especially to a Western audience, in the Arab world, there are the same talents, people with the same skills, and they're worth to be supported. And there are amazing artists, but who are unknown, you know? So, because I don't have to explain you, there is a huge ignorance, especially in the Western world. And that's why also I did Cairo Jazzman, you know, to put something against this ignorance.
Now, I'm curious, Christina, because you mentioned most of the people you work with are independent artists.
Yes.
And there's a very similar challenge in the Arab world with independent artists and independent filmmakers. That very often they're more popular outside than they are in their own country, or they're unknown, or they can't even be in their own country. How is it with the musicians that MARSM works with?
Well, it depends. Like we have people like Farouky who are actually really huge, or Mashrou' Layla who are really big within their own countries, but then they're not allowed to perform in other countries. Right? And it's like there's many nuances around that music. We work with all of them as long as we know that we can make the show happen and make our exposure to the or their exposure to the audience worthwhile of their trip here. Yeah, and there's like our input varies from, as I mentioned, Mashrou' Layla and Farouky to other voices like Dam, whom we've worked with, to like Maurice Luqa, who's actually based in Cairo as well, and who does experimental music. And the genre of music that you make also coming, like being outside of the official structures, being almost out of tune with the harmony that is present everywhere. That is also a statement.
I mean, it's a huge statement, especially in Egypt now, where independent artists are a real target for the government, right? And
yeah.
So there's a question here from Rana Asfour that I'll read out, which I think is relevant as well. Amr in the film spoke of lack of harmony rather than division in Egypt. That might be the reason creative projects were failing to launch. Was he being merely diplomatic, or did you feel the same as well? And if so, how hopeful do you feel for future creative projects in the country? So I think there's a sense that like, he used the term lack of harmony rather than saying division to be a bit generous, maybe is what the implication is. How do you feel, Atef?
Well, indeed, actually, I mean, he's right in my eyes. It's of course it would be if there would be more harmony, maybe it would be easier also to realize things, the respect for each other and so on. But of course, a general problem, universal problem is in tense situations or societies where you have a lot of problem, of course, egoism also starts to get bigger. So, and the sense for a common sense, team working and so on, it becomes more and more difficult, you know? So I see this in that context.
What's the status of the festival now, or even the club? Because I'm not sure the jazz club for a while was under threat of being closed down, no?
Well, I have nothing to do with the jazz club. You know, the Cairo Jazz Club is an own thing, and the Cairo Jazz Festival is another thing. So the Cairo Jazz Festival is still organized by Amr. He's doing it now as an indoor event in cooperation with the American University, which is great. So, and this is so far he's still doing it, and he's not thinking about stopping it or abandoning it, because for him, this is his biggest contribution for his country. I mean, when you have seen the movie, of course, he's an incredible patriotic guy, actually, you know. So, and for him, it's, I mean, his motivation also is to show the world Egyptians are able to do a great jazz festival, to do a great event, even if there is no big money behind it and so on, you know.
There's an interesting tension throughout the film where I think, you know, there's several characters who talk about the festival almost in a nationalistic sense, like his father who says it's a great way of showing how great Egypt can be, and the man from the Ministry of Tourism. And then you have like the Arabian Nights, the rap group, you know, who are very critical of the government, very critical of Arab governments in general. How do you think they work that balance? And maybe how did you do it in your film also, so that it's not, you know, it's not pure propaganda, but it's also not pure an activist film, for example?
What do you mean exactly? Because I didn't understand it. What do you want to get actually in that case?
Well, there's an interesting way of balancing the idea that how do you make, for example, how do you make the festival in Egypt and still have it work, but also invite guests who are very countercultural or critical of the government? So I'm just curious if you had those same challenges in the film itself.
I mean, first of all, it was just to show like the activism of people, you know, and that about the common things we have in the West with them. So there is no difference being Arab, being English, being German, being Brazilian or whatever. This is in general what I want to show, you know. And of course, I mean, for example, it's great to show in a successful example also because, I mean, there is a lack of self-consciousness or self-confidence, actually. And events like the Cairo Jazz Festival give you a bigger self-confidence because you can show that you're also able to do something and that you're capable. You know, it's not just like because you're in the Arab world, you're not capable to realize something. So, and it's great to see that there are people who realize something where you can be proud of it, you know. That's why for me it was great to have this story, and so I'm very grateful, you know, for my first documentary to show and to tell this story, because I was also so much behind it and supporting it on full scale, you know, and that's why I wanted to do it by any means. I wanted to realize this movie.
I mean, from my side, what I really want to just to highlight is whoever sees the movie, it looks good, it sounds good, it looks very professional, but you have to keep in mind, Atef put every single euro out of his own pocket for this. There is no funding involved. I mean, all of this, what you see is partly of people who really had the love for this project, and the other part is Atef, who carried everything on his shoulders financially and emotionally. And if you do something like this, because there is no help, there's no TV, there is nobody that helps you if you want to do your own thing. And even if there is somebody who wants to help you, only gives part of the whole thing, of the money or the help. So for me, this is one of the examples of why did I help this project to come to life, is you see all of this sweat, blood, and tears kind of coming in waves at you in every single frame. And then if you hear a story behind every scene, it's such an amazing accomplishment. A movie, first of all, is expensive. Even in the indie documentary like this, it costs a lot of money. It involves several people. It involves traveling. It involves equipment. It involves several other simple things. And this is, for me, the real thing that people have to understand. If you watch this movie, and it looks fantastic, yes, but it's because of the people. Many movies get money thrown at them and don't look as good. But since they have the money from special institutions, they have kind of this lobby that pushes it somewhere. So for me, the real accomplishment is, as an independent filmmaker, exactly this, what Atef did, carrying everything on his shoulders.
So yeah, and I have to say, of course, as when you are the director and producer at the same time, completely independent, you are really dependent on your team. And I was very privileged, super lucky that I got a fantastic team, really. Everyone who got involved in this production, they gave everything. And my shooting team, and then later Sebastian, who entered the production, and oops, hello? Yes,
yep.
Just got a call, that's why. So who entered the production and then also became my co-producer. you know, and got also the other people, you know, who did the graphic design, the sound design, the color grading, everything. So everyone really contributed with his heart, and it was never about money in this project. And this is the great thing when you have this team, like people who believe in your project and they give everything. This is the most great thing actually you can reach. And that's why I'm so grateful, really, because you're nothing without your team.
Yeah, it's amazing how the story of the film reflects the story of the festival in the film, right? I mean, similar challenges, similar dynamics, and you can definitely feel in the film this love for both Cairo and Amr and his project. I mean, it's an incredibly affectionate and tender film, although it's also very honest, I think, about, you know, his good sides and his bad sides. But one of the things I really loved about it is it shows Cairo in a way that is sort of loves the madness of the city. You know, in so many films, we see Cairo as either this sort of really depressing slum, or if it's an Egyptian filmmaker, it's just their city, so they take it for granted. But here, particularly with your editing, Sebastian, I felt like there was this love of the chaos and the beauty and the ugliness. And it was almost like, it reminded me in many ways of the city symphonies of the 1930s and 40s. I don't know if that was an influence on you, but it was almost like a jazz, you know, a city jazz film in response to these sort of old films that used to be made with classical music.
No, absolutely. I mean, as I told you, at the one side, Amro and his story, and the other side, the city of Cairo, you know. And as I told you, I have fallen in love with Cairo, and it's special. It's a unique city, and yeah, and I wanted to show the beauty, of course, but at the same time, of course, you know, not to deny the problems, you know, because our own aim was also, you know, to do an honest movie, not to, you know, pretend something or to do, you know. So yeah, and thank God it worked.
Yeah. Yeah, here's a question from Yusra that I think is quite good, and Christina, maybe your area of expertise. Arabic music has such a rich history. I was wondering what your thoughts are on the current music scene and industry in the region, and how this may have changed over the years. Do you feel religious cultural barriers are making musical expression and activism harder?
Okay.
To be honest, I'm not able to answer this question because I don't know really about the Arabic.
I was going to answer it. Yeah, if I may, since we work in music. So it's a complicated question, but it's very valid, especially that the scene is so varied and it has changed. So the point that I made initially about the creation of space in terms of creating spaces for independent and alternative music, I think that after the Arab revolutions, there has been an emergence of spaces that enable independent musicians to perform there, and also the whole underground movement. Like, whereas there is a huge crackdown on music in Egypt, like on Mahraganat, that were banned, to like, what's her name, Mariam Saleh was also banned by Hani Shakir from singing. There's like a lot happening, but at the same time, there's so much creativity that is going on, and if we bring it back to our current situation and the presence of digital media enabling this music to cross borders and to get out there, then beyond the space, there is that digital space where the creativity can spread and reach other people. So yes, there are limitations and obstructions, but I think that artists and musicians are finding ways to overcome them and get their messages and music and creativity across.
I wonder, is it important to you that musicians are supported within their own countries? Because there's a very long history of artists of all kinds, but you know, musicians, and I can think of a lot of filmmakers who have no career in their own country. They're either too radical or too art house and they're unknown, but they have a great career internationally.
Is that question aimed at me?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah. I think it depends. I mean, obviously, it's I think is it the art that we value? Is it the popularity that we value within, like when we deal with the artist? I think essentially it is their work, its depth, how it is perceived. It is actually important when the work is rooted within its local context and reflects on it. However, it's not essential. I mean, I can see, for example, the work of Camelia Gibran that is quite niche, quite unique. We can't say we can't call it popular in the popular understanding of the term. However, it is very important and very unique. So we would give it a platform, and it's still as important as any other type of music that is being made, that is rooted wherever in the world.
And there's a follow-up question here from Amir again. To what extent do you think jazz music is or will be adopted by religious groups in a way that, for example, Islamist rap is now coming into the picture? Or is this not possible in the Egyptian setting? Interesting question.
A very interesting question. I mean, have I come across jazz being adopted more like with Sufi music? Maybe, yes. But within a certain, like, if that's what she means by religious groups, but like Islamist, bringing Islamist influences within jazz, I haven't come across that, to be honest. It might happen. Why not? I mean, whenever there's an idea, then it means that there's a possibility of making it true, right? But whether that will happen or not, I can't judge at all.
Mm-hmm. We are almost out of time. If there's any other questions, I'll try and fit them in. But otherwise, I'd like to see what Atef and Sebastian are up to next. If you have another project, I know you're still in the middle of distributing this film.
Yeah, first of all, we still hope actually for a UK cinema premiere next year, hopefully, you know. Right. I mean, of course, we were working actually on it this year because in the UK also Cairo Jazzman got completely ignored, unfortunately. Although I've met several people who also loved it, and I'm sure, you know, that there would be an audience in London or anywhere in the UK. And so we're still hoping for it because, as I told you, it's a completely different experience to see Cairo Jazzman on the big screen than online. Of course, I'm grateful, you know, to have this promotion now and that people finally can see it all over the world. But we're still, as I told you, we did produce it for cinema. And we still hope to, for the next year, if the time will be better and more relaxed, so that we still can do it in London. Because also Amro, my protagonist, he is living in the UK now. He's settled down with his family in Watford. Oh, so, you know, there could be a nice opportunity to combine it with a great concert and screening. So, yeah, so let's stay in touch and let's hope the best for next year. Hopefully that, you know, this pandemic will be over an end, and then we can live our life in a normal way again.
That would be great. There is a music documentary festival here in London. Maybe I'll put you in touch with them because it seems like the perfect home for your film.
You're welcome.
And yeah, sorry.
Can I just bring attention to the fact that the film, as Amani has posted on the side, is still available to be viewed until the 15th of June through the MARSM website. And we will be releasing a new film for next month. We will have a movie about music every first Monday of the month. Too many M's in there. But yeah, if you're interested in it, please do join us and follow it.
Yeah, and by the way, so great work by you, the Arab British Center, and also MARSM. So I'm really grateful that we have met and that we stay in touch. So all the best from Berlin.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Sebastian, what's next on your plate?
Yeah, first of all, Atef and I are working and thinking about a next project, and there's something that works, and Atef is already kind of pushing, but you know, it takes time because it's difficult. Maybe Atef wants to say something about it, but it's still very early. Anyways, This is his thing. Atef, you want to say something about ongoing
Well,
work?
I can't tell you that much, but the thing is, it will be again about civil society activism, and this time classical music, hopefully.
Excellent.
Okay, so yes, again, staying for me as well, like I already said before, we all stay on the topic of intercultural topics. And like I said before, that my new feature is based in Iran, is portraying female singers in Iran. Because, as you know, maybe female singers, or well, it's forbidden in Iran for female singers to sing in public. It's forbidden for women to be part of many cultural events in public as well. So the film is kind of a road movie that is an entry to the Orient, and it's a very positive, enthusiastic movie again on Iran and its people, without the Western touch. We didn't want to, we didn't want to have something from the West explaining the East. We tried to have the East explain itself, and we just finished it. We went. It's been in the works for 5 years.
Oh.
And we shot 60% of the movie. We shot last year in October. We went for a month to Iran, and we concluded our journey. We really went to every corner of the country in those 5 years, and it's a huge country. It's as big as the whole Central Europe, and we combine different languages. They have Arabic there, they have Azerbaijani, they have Turkmenistan influences, so Turkmen, they have, border to Pakistan as well. It's crazy. So we travel from everywhere to everywhere, and we portray women from every corner and their singing and their culture and their music. And the movie is called The Female Voice of Iran, and it's built on the project of the contemporary music opera in Berlin. They did 2 music festivals with 20 women from Iran, and through these music festivals we built the bridges and connections, and we traveled to all of those 20 women who live all over. And we just released a trailer. You can find it on YouTube and on the website femalevoiceofiran.com. Our goal was to do the imaginary, to bring those 20 women together, because this is what's forbidden. We wanted to create a safe environment, a possibility for them to meet each other from all corners of the country and to sing together and to perform together. And this again is something impossible, because you don't get the permission for it. It's very, very difficult, and you have to be very careful. And the good thing is that we didn't do anything illegal. Everything is fine and great. And it has been a big, big challenge for me also editing it. Because over the course of 5 years, you collect material and then you build a story. But this is for another time. You're happy to check it out.
That'll be the sequel. Is it going to be available online through that website?
No. Well, first of all, we do have the same distributor as Cairo Jazzman has. EuroArts. We obviously we wait for film festivals to open up again. We still need, again, it's a movie made for the cinema, because all those movies you need to focus and you need to concentrate. You need a big screen where you can really kind of get in the whole atmosphere. And we really made it for cinema, so we wait and see. We're hoping for a big festival still this year for the world premiere and the international premiere, so that next year we can maybe talk to TV stations, but mainly go our own way of releasing it online on streaming platforms. What people do nowadays. But still, again, it's made for cinema, so we still push for festivals. And then let's see, because TV is difficult. The problem is with those, especially with Iran, since everything can be activism, you cannot just go for the big sell. Again, this is an independent production. We have full control, which in this case is very important. We are not funded by a political organization, or message by a state. We do our creative thing, and we work closely with Iranian producers as well. So it's not the German guys who make a movie, it's a German-Iranian team.
Cool. So great. So we'll look out for the film. What's the title again?
The Female Voice of Iran, and the website is femalevoiceofiran.com.
Perfect. So see it when it comes to cinemas near you. Watch Atef's film. Please share it with your friends and networks and families. Support the music of MARSM and their concerts and their online output. Hire Sebastian to edit your film very quickly.
Exactly.
Great talent. Support the Arab.
But I only do Oriental themes now. My niche from classical music went to Oriental themes. So this is all I'm doing. It has to involve some kind of structure like this.
Perfect. I'm sure there's a lot of people here working on cultural films in the Middle East.
Yes.
And join our mailing list at the Arab British Center and support what we do and support your local friends and shops and artists. And stay safe and stay healthy. And goodbye.
The same to you. Stay safe and healthy. And hopefully seeing you in London next year.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yes.
Exactly.
And great thanks to the Arab British Center for making this happen.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
guys.
all.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the visitors and questions and interactions. It's always
Yes.
great.
It's
We
been great.
need the stories behind the stories. Otherwise, it's very easy to judge and very easy to misjudge if we don't know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everyone. Take care. Unless there's anything else from Amani.